Hi, this is Jürgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis Vlog. This episode is titled The Truth About Stage Hypnosis. I recently made a video I titled The Truth About Hypnosis, and someone asked me, well, what about stage hypnosis? What about these guys who make people believe that they're chickens and have them do bizarre things where they seemingly forget everything afterwards? Is this real? Or is it just for show? And the answer is yes, it's both. So let's have a critical look at this. There's a lot of social psychology behind a hypnosis show. So consider this. Everyone who is part of a hypnosis show is a willing, consenting participant. That's hugely important to realize right off the bat. They've chosen to be there. They have consented to be there. They've even paid money for the most part to be there. So this is something that they have voluntarily signed up for. They've been introduced to the notions of hypnosis through culture. So they have a particular understanding of the hypnotic role that they're then willing to engage with and play out when they're on stage. Now, there's a selection process to get onto stage. So perhaps 5% or 10% of the population you could use as someone as part of a hypnosis show. So you're looking for the highly hypnotizable folks. You have to screen out the rest. So there's all these little tests and procedures where you test for hypnotic capacity and for compliance and for the willingness to go along with the experiences. So these little things are selected to kind of weed out the rest of the bunch. And for each time that you comply, you're more likely to comply. And then you watch the other people do bizarre things. So there's kind of a social force in that people have a tendency for the most part to do what other people do. There's the authority of the stage hypnotist that you've kind of accepted when you step into the role of being the hypnotic subject. There's if it's a show, there's the camera, there's the audience, there's all the social pressure as part of this. And there's also the opportunity to be a performer, to shine on stage, to have fun, to be able to engage in an activity without being held responsible for it. So I remember a friend once who had seen another friend play the role of a gay ballerina at a stage hypnosis show in Chicago, and he said, you know what, you play that role a bit too well. Like, there is something liberating about being able to play out stuff and to not be held accountable for it, to be able to say it was the hypnosis. Now, the people who do these weird things on stage, all you really see as the spectator is the way they behave. You don't have any access to their internal state. Might they be having the experience that their behavior suggests, or are they faking? The truth is, you have no way of knowing. The stage hypnotist has no way of knowing. In the hypnosis lab, it's been shown quite well that even experienced hypnotists, they usually don't see the difference between someone who's subjectively having a particular experience versus someone who's just pretending to have one. So the people up there on stage, they could be faking, they could be pretending, they could be just role-playing, or they could sincerely, subjectively have the experience that their behavior kind of suggests, unless you interview them. And they may not even be honest about their experience if you interview them, or you have access to their inner world, you don't really know. So that's one thing. There's a lot of showmanship involved in this. There's a lot of social psychology and acting involved in this. Now, there is a hypnotic element. What you're looking for is the kind of approximately 5% of the population or so that are highly hypnotizable, the hypnotic virtuosos. These are usually people who have a lot of capacity for absorption, to get completely absorbed into a suggested experience, who have a lot of experience for dissociation and suggestibility. This capacity to kind of get absorbed into a suggested experience and simultaneously have the experience that it's just happening and that you have nothing at all to do with it. Like, my hand is lifting, but it's not me doing it. That's the capacity for dissociation and suggestibility. Some people have a lot more of that capacity than others. When you test hypnotic capacity with like a 25-year interval, the test results are even more stable than the test results of IQ tests, which seem to be pretty stable. So there are quite a few experiments that show that deeply hypnotized people who have these experiences are not just pretending, they're actually having the experience. So there's a very well-known believing is seeing experiment done at Stanford with David Spiegel and his team, where you take highly hypnotizable folks and you offer them suggestions for a positive hallucination that they see color in an object that's just black and white. And when they do this, you have them in an fMRI scan, you can see that the color processing areas of their visual cortex in both hemispheres light up in exactly the same way that it does when people see color ordinarily. Whereas the low hypnotizable people who are kind of pretending and faking it don't have that neurological activation at all. You see the same things in studies with auditory hallucinations, where people are suggested to hear a voice or a piece of music that consensus reality would suggest is not there. And the areas of the brain that light up when they hear music or hear a voice ordinarily in the world lights up in exactly the same way with the highly hypnotizable subjects. Same with pain. There are 44 areas of the brain involved with the experience, for example, of pain. And so when people hypnotically suggest pain, that their arm is on fire or something like that, the experience lights up in their brain in exactly the same way that it does when people experience some accident or some form of physical trauma. So having done a lot of hypnosis with people, of course, I'm not in the neuroscience lab, but I know that it's very possible that a certain percentage of the people on stage, that if you hooked up their brain to an fMRI machine, you would see the neurological activation that would be there if someone, for example, saw colors, if they're responding to a suggestion to visually hallucinate something, for example. So it is show business. It is artistry. It is social psychology. There probably is quite a bit of faking and malingering going on, but there's also good reason to believe that quite a few of the people up there actually genuinely experience as real, both subjectively and neurologically, the things that are suggested. Hypnosis is a real phenomena in that sense. I think what people may be asking is, does this mean that the hypnotist has some sort of mind control, over the person who is the subject? And the answer is no. They don't. Remember this. It's, someone asked me, well, what about Darren Brown? What about these street hypnotists? And remember that all anyone else can ever do is to offer you information. That sounds kind of dry, but all anyone else can ever do really is to offer you information to create a context. It's what you hear. It's what the person hears. It's how they make sense out of it that determines their experience. So if two people watch Federer and Nadal, for example, have a tennis match, and let's say that Federer wins, the Federer fan might be ecstatic. The Nadal fan, might be deeply depressed. It's not that Federer made them ecstatic. It's that particular thing that happened mapped onto their preferences, what was going on internally for them. So remember that people are not blank slates. You can't program them. They have their inclinations and their motivations, and if what you suggest maps onto that, the person can have a meaningful experience. Herbert Spiegel had a great response to this. Some patient asked him, will you be able to control my mind during a smoking cessation session? And he said, if hypnotists had those types of powers, I'd be at the United Nations. Did you really think I would be sitting here spending my time with you? There's something about that particular response that I found a bit humorous, but all of us, for me, I have 25 years of experience seeing clients. I have experienced deeply hypnotized clients with a lot of capacity, experiencing all sorts of hypnotic phenomena in the office, still fail to stop smoking. So if a deeply hypnotizable client can not at all realize suggestions to stop smoking, and this is these are clients who pay you money to help them, who at least on some level want to be there and have social support. So it shows you that deep hypnotic capacities in and of themselves does not compel anyone else to have control over you. It's so that is important to remember. I should end up by saying this though, and that does not mean that hypnotic work may not have its risks. I've made videos about this in the past, so I won't repeat it, but the big scandal in psychology in the 80s and 90s was this whole repressed memory epidemic where people allegedly discovered memories of being sexually abused and satanic ritual abuse and multiple personalities and all sorts of stuff during therapy. Sometimes people would accuse and remember, for example, their father sexually abusing them during therapy, and these were memories that they had no access to this before the therapy. Not a good outcome, right? So and in all likelihood, these memories are fabrications. Now, people sometimes say, well, why would someone ever want to do that? Well, if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, life hasn't gone the way you wanted to, perhaps you're a bit entitled, a bit narcissistic, you buy into this victimhood narrative. Being able to discover this repressed trauma, for example, that you can kind of use as an alibi or identity hook that essentially says, look, it's not your fault. Your life would have been amazing. It's just this thing happened that happened to you. This can be appealing enough. In the same way that some people sometimes confess to murders they haven't done, because the police trick them and say that we have evidence and you did it, we can prove it, you just don't remember it because you're a good person and help us to give the family peace and this and that. And if someone buys into that premise and they get read interrogation techniques, or they get very coercive techniques, social isolation. They may believe that if I just confess to this, I'll be able to go home, or that the police will figure out that it wasn't so, or they might feel so much guilt because they buy into the premise that their mind generates a memory of having committed the murder that they had no part in. So suggestive experiences, hypnotic processes, can have their risks depending upon the context, as can all human endeavors. But it does not mean that because you are have a lot of hypnotic capacity and you're part of this hypnotic process, that someone else has control over your mind. All they really do is to provide you with information. So, and of course, stage hypnotists, kind of depend upon projecting this aura of having hypnotic powers, and that they have some sort of special talent, and that they can make you do things, and people kind of buy into that. And as long as they buy into that, they may think, feel, and behave as if that hypnotist has special powers, but only because they think so. As one stage hypnotist, Michael C. Anthony, sometimes likes to say, hypnosis is not what you think it is, but it is what you think it is. I think in many ways that kind of sums it up. So I hope this was informative for you. Know that I see clients on Skype from all over this spinning planet. If you want to make any changes in your life and my way of thinking and working resonates, you can reach me at provocativehypnosis.com. Thanks for listening.